Because in 1857, the British realized that you do not control only by physical force, you control by hegemony. 1909, for example, was a great year in our history where three important documents were produced. Mahatma Gandhi wrote the Hind Swaraj, Sri Aurobindo gave the Uttara Para address, and Veer Savarkar renamed mutiny as the first war of independence.
So Nadir Shah comes in and he takes 7,000 wagons of loot from India, and he fills the coffers of Tehran, and he fills the museums of Turkey. So it is not really about what was taken away in as much as the spirit that survived here, because the natural wealth of this nation, Indian civilization, has caused barakat for one and all. We have given, we have given, we have given.
We have taken
yes,
also.
Part of it would have been that we have been looted, we've been looted. But the fact is that we have given a lot of barakat to the rest of the world. So the history of geography does seem like a bottomless and a limitless topic to start with. My co-panelist and I decided to focus on India's interactions with the rest of the world, which will define the history and the geography both. A few questions that I wanted to throw up to the audience. From the knowledge perspective itself, we all grew up learning the Pythagoras theorem. Hypotenuse square is equal to base square plus height square. I'm waiting for the day that the entire world calls the decimal system Brahmagupta's decimal system, so that we all understand where the 0 came from, where the base 10 of the number system came from, and how a better understanding of numbers led to ease of accounting, ease of trade, and this is what Fibonacci presented as modus indicum to the Italian court, which helped them account for trade better. So I think one of the first things that Chopra ji and I would like to see getting done is the decimal system being called the world over as Brahmagupta's decimal system. The other thing, in terms of geography, I'm looking at the Mekong River in Southeast Asia, and where does the name Mekong come from? It comes from Mai Nam Chong, which is Mother Water Ganga. That's just Khmer for Mother Water Ganga. So you have a Southeast Asian river which is known by an Indian name in its own language. So India, like the panelists on the previous segment also said, and geopolitically, and this is what I love, the only empress that China has ever had, the only empress, her name of course was Wu Zitan, she engineered a coup with the help of scholars from Nalanda University. And this is now being studied. So there is so much of India all over the world, and with these opening remarks, I would like to ask my co-panelist who's written this wonderful book, We the People of the States of Bharat. I'd like him to talk about the idea of the history of geography to your mind, the idea of the civilization of India, what our limits are, do we have any, what are the lines that we have drawn over time, and what are the lines we should be removing now. Over to you, Mr. Chopra.
Thank you. This question that you've asked me is the subject of 10 PhDs and 20 literature festivals. So, but thank you. Your reading is very extensive, and the title has been given by Prabol. Prabol. He gives these very interesting titles to get things rolling. But I think the point is also about civilization and nation state. You see, I think civilizations have no boundaries. Civilizational state has no boundary. For instance, if you look at it in a very classical sense, let's look at the Indic civilization. If you look at it, actually there is the Indic civilization, there is the Islamic civilization, there is the Christian civilization. by whatever different names we call it. Civilizations do not have a boundary. Quran does not begin here and end there. I mean, it did not, Quran does not say that I started in Makkah, Medina and here I will end. Quran will like to extend itself everywhere. Likewise with Bible, likewise with the Testament, likewise with the Gita. So you have Gita, you have the ISKCON temple, you have so many things. So civilizations will continue to expand and civilizations will continue to grow. Earlier civilizations also got into a typical nation state, which is what the Treaty of Westphalia is about, that you have one state, one language, one religion, that kind of a thing was there. But as we move on, we got to realize that India is both a civilization and a nation. India is both a geography and also a cultural construct. India is also in our minds, India is also in our thought, and India is also a practical nation with a specific GDP and a specific border and a specific boundary which is protected by General Pannu and by all the people around us. I mean, there's a boundary which has been given to us. A question which has often been asked to me, especially when you go and lecture at NDC or at the Defence Services Staff College or in my own institute, that in the new parliament that we have set up a map of the ancient Bharata. And one is often asked, what do you think about this map? So I said, look, as far as I am concerned, and as far as all of us who've joined the service is concerned, we have taken an oath to preserve and protect all that is written in the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India, Article 1, Clause 1, defines the territory of India. So as far as General Pannu and I are concerned, we'll defend that territory which has been defined in the Indian Constitution. Anything beyond that territory is part of the civilizational construct of India, which extended up to the Champa Kingdom. Vietnam was a Champa Kingdom. We have to make this distinction between civilizations and nation states. And I think that's where I have been researching on.
A small comment on the word civilization itself. It's a very new word. Civilization is an 18th century word. And when this word was being discussed in erudite society all over the world, India was in the dark ages, so to say. We were a colony. So, considering the definition of our civilization, and we all love to rank things. We find a new term and we all love to rank it somehow. So, when this entire conversation around civilizations and ranking of civilizations was going on, unfortunately, India wasn't being considered in its true essence at the time, because a lot of the excavations have happened more recently than that. Because of which we take the pride that we do today in the India that we are and the India that we were. So the origin of the word civilization, the definitions, and a lot of the literature, because literature as a bridge to the rest of the world is also something we want to talk about, happened much later, and therefore we lost out on all those rankings, which is why we still speak about the Greek civilization, the Roman civilization,
frankly,
and today we are coming back to it, yes.
It doesn't really, words will keep changing their meaning over time. Civilization has changed its meaning. Every word will change its meaning over time. For the specific thing that you see, today we understand what a nation is. We understand today. We understand what it was. For instance, if you go back to the Mahabharata, that is this whole conversation with Sanjay and Dhritarashtra asking which armies are on that side, which armies are on this side. So whether we treat those as nations, whether we treat them, so that's a different thing. We have to look at what do we understand by civilization today, what do we understand by the nation state today. And let me just put it very clearly and very bluntly. People are talking about us because we are becoming powerful. If India was not powerful, nobody would be talking about us, right? So there could be many other cultures, many other civilizations, many other nations that we're doing, culturally there could be better, but it's the strength of the language. Look at Tibet. Look at the great scriptures that would be written there. But because they don't have a state, because there's nobody to propagate it beyond the Dalai Lama. It's probably, maybe after, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, if Tibet was to become an independent sovereign state, we'll get lots of nuggets of information from them. Today we are talking about what we lost in Nalanda. We don't know how much Tibet is lost, how much Tibet is losing. So all histories are constructs. All histories are constructs. All histories are written by powerful people, by powerful empires, and those within the nation who are powerful, as is happening in our case also.
I agree with this part about a powerful nation being the topic of discussion. So just as we discussed the origin of numbers and the decimal system just now, imagine if all of us had to multiply in Roman numerals, XLV into XVC. What I'm trying to say here is that the Levantine alphabets, for instance, the alphabet systems, where are Syria and Iraq today in the conversation? India is part of the conversation because it's a powerful, I'm agreeing with what you're saying. We are a powerful nation, which is why we are able to reclaim our history. Syria and Iraq today will not be able to do that because they are not in any shape, political shape, to do that in the present moment. And even though the origin of alphabets and the origin of a lot of how we write today is owed to them, perhaps they will not be able to take the credit for it today.
You see, but the whole, we have also borrowed a lot.
Yeah.
We have borrowed a lot, we have given a lot. It's only fluidity which helps us to grow. Anyone who comes to this conclusion that I know everything and there's nothing beyond my knowledge, that there's nothing beyond this, those civilizations are going to become, that's not the way we have looked at ourselves. We are great, we have our strength because we believe that we can learn from others, that we can gain from others. And, we keep learning, civilizations, cultures, families, languages. There's no original language. All languages borrow from each other. All cultures borrow from each other. So we must celebrate this diversity.
Totally. Yes. You were talking about the journey of your book.
No, the journey of my book, it's a very interesting. See, we were at the Survey of India, and there I saw whenever the Governor Generals of India, they used to have a map of India behind their seat. And the first map I saw was of 1796, which was made by the Survey of Bengal, and it was written the map of our Indian possessions. But every 10 years, the map of India would change because they first had Plassey and in that area, then they captured Allahabad, then they got Secunderabad. So every few years, the map of India would change. And every few years, the Survey of Bengal, then called the Survey of Bengal, would come out with a new map, which was put behind the Governor General. So that's how we see the evolution of maps, And then I started looking at maps from 1947. And that's when I realized that, from 1947 to 2019, the Indian map has changed so many times that we do not even remember what the first map looked like. And that's something I want to share with you. Not one state in the country, not one area in this country has the same name or the same territory as it was in 1947. This place was Bombay. Punjab that we see today is a very truncated version of the Punjab in 1947. It was Pepsu and Punjab. Haryana came later, Himachal came later, Odisha was... So across the last, till 2019 when Jammu Kashmir was reorganized into Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. So every few years, a new India has emerged, and that brings us to the ship of Theseus. When you've changed every part of the ship, are we talking of the same ship? Or are we talking of a different ship? And is that the core strength of India? The core strength is that we have been willing to accept, adopt, adapt, and do all these things. So that is, when we talk about the history of geography, what I meant in the Indian context was that when we look at the Itihas of India, say from the times of Mahabharata. Let's take the Mahabharata because there was a gentleman here who sang the first lines of Mahabharata. I'm very glad that it's a foundational text of the country. So from that time to now, how we have evolved as a nation and how we'll keep evolving. You see, evolving, when I say evolving, it's a very dynamic term because these days you don't need territory to have your influence, and that's another aspect of nations and of civilizations and of cultures, that you don't really need a territory. In fact, at one of the conversations, somebody said that we keep saying in a national anthem, Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, but where is Sindh? So there is Sindh in the Punjab and Sindh Bank. There is Sindh on our currency note. That's why Sindhis have the maximum amount of money in the country, because they're on the 500 rupee note, you know. And several states in this country have a Sindhi academy. So you do not need a territory. You sometimes do not need a territory to express yourself. So it's a very modern, all these things are very evolutionary, right? So we
So
are
I
in
have a
stage
question
of,
for you.
Yeah, sure.
As you were writing this book, you might have felt that there is not that cohesion in all those princely states that were brought together by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel at the time. And he had a very, very difficult task on his hands. So while doing your research, what was the...
Sorry. He was aided by a very able bureaucrat.
Yes, Mr. Menon, of course.
Yeah, so
But given that Mr. Menon was a part of it, I wanted to understand from you, how did they find commonality within the differences? Because that really is the most important part of your book for me.
The princely states really did not have a choice. They were there at the mercy of the empire. They were there with the empire because in 1857 the British realized that you do not control only by physical force, you control by hegemony. Hegemony is a Marxist word, but it's a concept which very, very clearly explains how do you control the mind space. So the way the British controlled us was by giving the Maharajas 21 gun salute, 19 gun salute, 17 gun salute. You know, they kept us busy fighting over all these things. So, you know,
running a mafia of annexation.
So you see, and in fact, I must share with you this interesting story. You know that there were 5 21 gun salute states in the country. So when the First World War happened, and we were talking about World War, in order to get the Muslim troops to fight on their side, so they told the Nizam of Hyderabad, you know, you please issue a firman, you know, that it is legitimate to fight for your king and country. So Nizam promptly issued a firman saying that Muslim troops can go and fight in Turkey. And then Nizam also gave a big donation to the Raj, and he also gave money to the Khalifa. So the Nizam was playing all sides. And his sons were married to the daughters and the nieces of that place. So after the war, the Nizam said, now you better do something for me. You increase my gun salute. So the British are very clear that 101 topon ki salami is reserved for the sovereign, 51 for the spouse of the sovereign, 31 for the viceroy, and 21 for, you know, Jammu Kashmir and Baroda and all these bigger states. They said, wo to nahi kar sakte, but we shall call you His Exalted Highness, and raise your protocol to the highest amongst the princes. So that's how the British kept us, and none of the states actually had any power. I mean, they were used by the Britishers as a prop, and once that prop ended, it wasn't very difficult, I mean, we talk about, you know, the Hyderabad operation or Jammu Kashmir. I mean, Jammu Kashmir, if it walked in right on the day one, I mean, this problem would not have been there. So a lot of our things happen because they happen. And there are no justifications, because history is all about things which happen, sometimes accidentally. Sometimes we don't even know how things are happening, and they happen. Problem with the way syllabi had been made in the 70s and 80s. In fact, I wrote about it that in JNU, where we were doing modern Indian history, Ambedkar was not taught. I mean, the texts of Ambedkar were not taught. But I mean, had we read Ambedkar's Waiting for a Visa, you know, and even now, when we talk about our history, some of the most important seminal texts, you know, the abolition of caste, you know, Waiting for a Visa, on the linguistic question, these are all great works by Ambedkar. And that's where the contest of ideas must happen. You know, one of the classes that I mean, because teaching history to IAS officers can be very, very difficult, you know, because they've all cleared a major exam, the UPSC, and they feel that they have learnt everything, you know. So this notion starts early, and we have to disabuse them. Our training is all about letting them know that they don't know everything. So I started a little thing by giving them certain important texts of this country. 1909, for example, was a great year in our history where 3 important documents were produced. Mahatma Gandhi wrote the Hind Swaraj, Sri Aurobindo gave the Uttara Para address, and Veer Savarkar renamed Mutiny as the First War of Independence. So these three texts, then the text of Annie Besant, Why India Must Be Free, which is a good historical feminist text. That's another text which is important. Then Bhagat Singh writes, Why Am I an Atheist? Look at now the remarkable diversity that we have in our country. Which freedom movement in the world would have icons? And you see, today in Delhi, you have to put the photo of Ambedkar, you have to put the photo of Bhagat Singh. Kisi ki himmat nahi photo ko utarne ki. I mean, whether they like Bhagat Singh or not, whether they like Ambedkar or not, I mean, they have to put the photo, right? The photograph has to be put because it has been put there once. So you have Bhagat Singh talking about why I'm an atheist, right? You have, again, you have this the speech of Jinnah in 1940, where he says, I must get my Pakistan. So I get these seminal texts read by the young officers, and then I tell them, you enact this. Now you think that you are Ambedkar and you are giving the speech and you contradict him. And that is where we realize the beauty of our country. It is not just one text. It is not just one text in philosophy. It is not just the fight between Uttar Mimamsa and Purva Mimamsa. It is not just the fight between Sankhya and the Vedanta. It's also the fight of a historical tradition. Do I accept Bhagat Singh? If I accept Bhagat Singh, then what is Gandhi doing? If I accept Gandhi, then what is Bhagat Singh doing? If I accept all of them, then what is Savarkar doing? If I accept all this, then what is Ambedkar doing? But we have accepted everybody and we have to study everybody. And that is where the strength, that is how we have to study our history. That is how we will get an understanding of what we are as a nation. I mean, this whole discussion that we have to about the ideas, India ideas as a nation, that is what we have to do.
Right. So coming back to the history of geography itself, and coming back to the fact that within India's geography,
Yes.
I found certain challenges. So having these conversations that we can agree on, sometimes as a civilization, we move forward because we have shared values, because we have shared progress, because we believe in a few things together. And having these understandings that define us are becoming increasingly important, and which is why I think the crop of writers that we are all today, asking the questions, creating these, new, I think many people are calling it revisionist perhaps, but I don't think it is revisionist at all. I think it is just one step beyond the questions that were asked yesterday. We are just asking one more question, and therefore we are finding a new answer.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
therefore, the history that is being written today, I think is going to help all of us achieve this common understanding. And of course, as a civilization, he said that the ideas of a civilization are so far beyond its boundaries. What is going to make India and what has made India survive? We've had 27% of the world's GDP.
I would take a more realistic view of history, and therefore, let's continue. Yes, we were 27%, the British rogered us. It's fine. We'll make up for it.
Yes, we will make up for it. But the Gangetic plains, the agriculture, the natural resources, there is so much more to that GDP than just people coming in. And I think we all know that Nadir Shah, for instance, he came in.
Now you're going back 7 centuries.
No. Nadir Shah is after Aurangzeb.
Right.
Is
Sorry,
way
yeah,
after
right,
Aurangzeb.
right,
So
right.
please hold
Panipat.
on.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
So Nadir Shah comes in and he takes 7,000 wagons of loot from India, from Rangila. The name of the emperor at that time was Rangila. And he fills the coffers of Tehran and he fills the museums of Turkey. So it is not really about what was taken away in as much as the spirit that survived here, because the natural wealth of this nation, the soil of this nation, the Gangetic plains, the rivers of this nation, the ores of this nation, these cannot be taken away. Yes, people took what could be taken, but there was a wealth intrinsic to India that could not have been taken, and a lot of the GDP was because it was a fertile land to build on. And people came in, they found their own ways to survive, and they built on that. Correct, Sanjeev sir?
You see, I was only trying to correct a narrative I was only trying to correct the whole thing, you see, Nadir Shah came here, but let us understand that every generation, there is something called a Yug Dharma. That Yug Dharma, you see, today you have the Geneva Convention. A lot of people ask that why did we give these 93,000 soldiers back to Pakistan? If you have signed the Geneva Agreement, you got to do it. And how long can you hold on to them? It's all very easy to say that this happened. Today we live in an age where India is a signatory to several treaties. What were the treaties at that time? They were doing what they were doing at that time. So, it's all very easy to say. I mean, Ashoka, the great emperor of peace, he became the great emperor of peace after killing, how many people? So, it is our civilization which has seen the Mahabharata in which everybody died. There were 18 armies, 11 on the side of Kauravas, 7 on the side of Pandavas, and practically all of India died. All the male population was extra. So let us not, what I am saying is, let's not get into that myth making about ourselves. That's a dangerous sign. We have to accept our history, we got to celebrate our success, and also understand that yes, we made mistakes in the past.
Wonderful. So in terms of understanding what makes a civilization thrive. Okay, we'll just come to a constructive point where we'll take lessons from what we have seen and try and identify why the country or the civilization that gave numbers to the world is finding its feet again, and why the nations that gave alphabets to the world are not able to find their feet. I think somewhere we try and see what shared values, what shared purpose, what prosperity, power, right? The words that Sir has been using, and they are very important words. What has been the defining factor that has made India as a civilization survive? And what has been the defining factor that has made the Mesopotamia and the Levantines not survive the way India has? Shall we exchange some thoughts on that, Sir?
Yes, we can. I do not know why the others went off. Perhaps they were not adaptive enough. A
That's
nation
an
which is
interesting
not
point.
adaptive enough goes away. We have been very good at adapting, including the English language, for example.
Yes, absolutely.
So the moment a nation is willing to adapt, adjust, and move on. In fact, the first title of my book was, The Making of India: Aspirations, Assertions, and Adjustments. Millie is sitting here and she knows that authors have no hold over the title which they give to their books. So these publishers are very good people because they sell our books, but they are bad because they also make us change our titles. So she didn't do it, but her colleagues at Harper did it. So they felt this is a better title. But anyway, the point is, you see that nations which every nation will aspire, every nation will protest, and then there will be some adjustment that will take place. So, for example, when dialogues, when we had, because civilization, as I said, if it is scripture and if it is language and if it is a certain text, if you are in a position to absorb, adapt, engage, converse, you see, so for example, when we had our first dialogues with the Christian missionaries, when we had our first dialogues with Islam, in fact, you see, history is different. Had Akbar, Deen-e-Ilahi, had that taken shape, things would have been different. The coincidence of history that Dara Shikoh got rogered in the whole process, but Dara Shikoh is also a very important person. So sometimes what happens is that, who wins, who loses, also determines the course of history. But I would say that, our ability to absorb, to engage, to have conversations, to share, is very, very important, because nations which do not share also lose out. So I think that is our core strength.
Absolutely. And I think there is this beautiful word called barkat, which we will all agree on.
Absolutely.
Indian civilization has caused barkat for one and all. We have given, we have given, we have given.
We have taken also.
Yes, part of it would have been that we have been looted, we've been looted. But the fact is that we have given a lot of barkat to the rest of the world. And I remember one instance in particular, which I'm going to share very quickly. While I was researching for my next book, which is about a warrior who decided whether the British East India Company or the French East India Company would eventually rule India, which is with Millie, who is here with all of us. I realized that there was this governor of Madras, his name was Thomas Pitt. He somehow managed to steal one diamond. And he took it back. He takes it back. He sells it and overnight becomes the richest man in England. He buys himself a mansion, and his descendants, William Pitt and Pitt the Junior, eventually become successive prime ministers of England. So that is the kind of barakat that we have distributed freely. There are so many books that talk about people coming here, fathers sending good for nothing young men to India, saying wahan kuch na kuch uska ho jayega, he will earn some money and come back. So as a civilization, we have only given. Yes, we have absorbed influences, because civilization is like cross-pollination. That is the whole point of civilization. If there is no cross-pollination, we would all be extremely rigid. We would not learn and absorb from each other. I think one of the most important things for all of us to acknowledge and be proud of is our place in the world, is what the number of inventions that we have been part of, and the fact that as a nation state, Sir made a difference between a nation state and a civilization state, we are finally taking charge of our storytelling, which was till this point just a hand-me-down. We are today taking charge of our narrative, we are taking charge of our storytelling, and that is something I'm really looking forward to.
Yes, but I would only say that in our storytelling, it should not be hagiography. In our storytelling, we should acknowledge our mistakes. We should understand where we went wrong. We should understand why we lost the Battle of Plassey. We lost the Battle of Plassey, and my friend Meeta Rajiv Loshan has written this book, Making India Great Again. She says that the East India Company was paying its troops regularly and on time. We were not. So, if you are not willing to pay, Mir Jafar was not, Sirajuddaula was not paying his army on time, whereas you had an army all composed of Jaunpuris. The entire, everybody on both sides was a Jaunpuri.
Sir,
right?
I must bring in power here. Jagat Seth, the businessman in
Bengal,
he paid $1 million.
This side.
He paid $1 million to Robert Clive, and he paid $1 million to the company, and that is why we lost the Battle of Plassey.
We lost the Battle of Plassey because we were not paying our army on time. The East India Company, and that is something we have to learn from what do you learn from the East India Company? Accounting. What do you learn from East India Company? Record keeping. What do you learn from the East India Company? Loyalty to itself, in the sense that the first disability pension was introduced by the East India Company. The East India Company realized that my soldiers will be with me if I agree to give them, even if they have lost a limb. Let us recognize some of we must learn when we rewrite our history. When we rewrite, and we are doing it. I'm doing it, she's doing it, all of us are doing it, but we must not paper over the wrongs that we've done. If we had not done those wrongs, we would not have been in the soup that we are in. Thank you very much. It was wonderful.